Welcome to the Tourism Hub podcast, a podcast devoted to you and your excellence, providing inspiration and education for the entrepreneurs, experience makers, and excellence seekers of our industry to take your tourism business and career to a whole new level. And I am your host, Despina Karatius. Hello, and welcome to everybody. It is very exciting to have you join us here today with a very, very special guest indeed that will, and very fitting day to have this particular guest to join me on the Tourism Hub podcast. Now, without this, at the time of this recording, we are recording and we've themed our episode around mental health and well-being, being Mental Health Awareness Day, a World Mental Health Awareness Day today. Now, this comes at a time when, as we know, the daily lives of many people have changed considerably as a result of COVID and the pandemic and just 2020 in general. We all know this year has definitely been a tough one, not only for the tourism industry, but for the health sector, providing care in difficult circumstances, going to work fearful of bringing COVID home with them, for students adapting to taking classes from home with little contact with teachers and their friends, and anxious about their future. It's also been very, very difficult for the vast number of people that are caught in poverty at the moment. Now, with these many different experiences and even greater social isolation, it's easy to say that nothing of managing the grief of losing a loved one during this time has been incredibly challenging. And I know for this is the devastating experience for myself and my family that we've had to go through, and not being able to properly say and respectfully saying goodbye to a loved one during this time. So thoughts and prayers out to people that have had to experience that during these last few months, particularly in Melbourne, in the restrictions that we have experienced. Speaking of Melbourne and our tourism friends that have joined us, it's safe to say that it has decimated our industry. The economic consequences of this pandemic already being felt as companies are letting go of staff, people losing jobs, and indeed businesses having to make the decisions to shut down completely. Now, my guest, Mel Neal, I've wanted to have her on from day one, even before this podcast came to be, even when it was a thought, when it was an idea. She's someone that was very top of the list. And, you know, these things happen when they're meant to happen. And I couldn't think of someone more fitting to come and share her wonderful self and journey and insights to, you know, as someone that is continually supporting the flourishing of other humans. Now, to introduce Mel Neal, she's a human in tourism that is very dear to many through her work, particularly around the award-winning Tourism Leadership Program that many of you listening may know Mel. Which is now this program in its second decade. She's an Australian positive psychology practitioner and consultant, and is the founder and CEO of Mind Insurance. She designs, she delivers custom emotional intelligence and strengths-based leadership. This is something that I certainly loved the first time I met Mel. And for many of us, we know she has a strength-based approach in her work. And also performance programs for public and private sector clients. As a credentialed trainer in leading emotional intelligence and positive psychology assessment instruments, Mel also provides certified training, course facilitation, strategic planning, and one-on-one coaching. The uniting theme of Mel's work is her desire to empower and facilitate the success of individuals, organizations, and communities. Mel combines her knowledge and skills and unique ability to make the empirical science and research practical, teaching leaders, teams, and individuals how to increase personal, business, and collective well-being. To explore her journey, how to build your psychological well-being and cultivating a landscape of flourishing. I just love how she articulates that. Welcome to the show, my dear and our dear Mel Neal.
Despy, thank you so much. A very lovely introduction, and how special it is for us to be together on this podcast. It's very, very cool.
It's very cool and real. With all seriousness, a dream come true. You were on that list of people I would love to interview and have on the show before this came to fruition 4 years ago. So it took me 4 years, but it couldn't be a better time for us.
Thank you for reaching out.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, and thank you. Now, to get us started, your journey into exploring this pathway for you of positive psychology and emotional intelligence. What was it that led you to pursue this path?
Okay, so there's a couple of, I suppose, really important aspects to the story. One is that I had some chronic health issues as a young person right through until, to this day, but significantly up until probably my early mid-30s, that made holding down a normal job pretty difficult. So I looked for opportunities to be able to be flexible in my application of any type of work because it was difficult to find work environments where I could take off the amount of time that I needed due to the health issues. And so coaching was a fantastic vehicle through which I was able to do that, where I could kind of turn that on and off depending on my state of health. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is I've always had an interest in personal and professional development, and the roles that I had in the early days in any type of learning and development space used a lot of what I was able to identify very quickly. A lot of everyone who has heard me speak will know that I couldn't call it conceptual fluff. So stuff out of the conceptual fluff bucket, which is just nice, pretty stuff that's marketed well, but actually we know empirically it doesn't work. It sounds good, but it actually doesn't provide results. Very short-term spikes, and then, you end up back where you were or before where you even started. So about, it'd have to be easily 18 plus years ago, I made a distinct decision that I would go with the science and I would leave aside a lot of the popular stuff and made a commitment to the science of human flourishing, which includes a lot of the topics covered by that overarching theme of positive psychology, but also many other things, and of course emotional intelligence in particular. So those would be the sort of two key elements of that journey.
And then now with that, so you were coaching, you've been coaching for a long time, that was something that you pursued. And I think that is something that's very relevant now for a lot of people, that there is, whether you are in a secure role or you are in business, there is no such thing as security at the moment because there's so much uncertainty of what's to happen. So I love what you've shared, that although it was illness, that something that you needed to traverse your way around flexibility, it's also a way that you've been able to manage your work from an early age, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so it wasn't, the facilitation side of things didn't really solidify until I was well enough to be able to spend, hours on my feet at a time. So now my business is, we're pretty much half and half, in terms of half of it is either delivering content via webinars, which is very common, obviously, since COVID hit, but obviously a lot of face-to-face facilitation as well with teams and organisations. And 50% of my work is still in that coaching space, one-on-one, which is really special because you are you're really able to connect with an individual and get down to the core of what they're striving for. And, my role is to hold a space and for those people. And if I can add some value in getting some clarity for them, then that's what I aim to do. So I still have that flexibility built in, even though the facilitation side of things has obviously grown as I've been physically well enough to be able to do that.
Which is incredible. And you've been able to get, I guess you were before your time with your business in developing online programs to be able to reach and help more people in that way. And speaking about your business, Mind Insurance, now from your journey and then going to that next step to go out on your own and start Mind Insurance and build your own team, can you share with us that defining moment that you said, okay, I need to go now and do this for myself?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm a firm believer that being your own boss isn't for everybody. So running your own business is certainly not for everybody, but then also working for a boss is not for everybody either. So I think one of the things an individual needs to be able to really do some introspection, think very carefully about how they work and what they're trying to achieve, and find out what is the environment that's going to help them flourish at doing that. Now, for me, it was most definitely being my own boss, and what that meant, not from a control perspective, but it meant that if I had some wins, they were on me, but if I also had things that didn't go well, they were on me as well. So I felt that it was an environment that gave me the autonomy to decide what risks I would take, at the same time as having to be, responsible for the consequences of any of those risks. And I was happy to take both of those on evenly. And most of the people that I think are very scared to take that step into some sort of consulting role or starting their own business, my phrase that I say to them immediately is, careful what you wish for, because if you do it well and you have an authentic product and an authentic presentation of that product, you'll find yourself way more busier than you were fearful that you would ever find another piece of work. But again, I sort of underlay that with it's not for everybody. And so once you've understood that you're okay with that, I actually don't have a paycheck guaranteed that comes in regardless of whether the world moves left or right. And interestingly enough, up until COVID, if you worked in a job, that's what you had. And COVID has thrown that completely up in the air for everybody who depended on that security. But one of the most amazing opportunities that you can have is, if you are actually in the driver's seat, is that you don't have that. You're not at the behest of someone else's decision making. So there's something pretty powerful about that as well.
Oh, incredibly well put. That it's not something for everyone, and there's some really key things to consider for anyone that has a bubbling passion to pursue. That this crossroad could be that leading light to pursue that. But there's also, yes, eyes wide open and careful what you wish for. What I also love what you've shared is that being your own boss is to authentically pursue the wins, but also it's an ability to keep yourself accountable, and be accountable for the results in however they come about. So good. Now, the COVID, what we've experienced at the moment, there has been a secondary crisis here around people's mental well-being, of what we are experiencing. Now, as I guess as someone that with your experience and your work in advocating for human flourishing, when it comes to the pandemic and something we couldn't have prepared for in our lifetime. It wasn't on many businesses' risk management that a pandemic might hit in the next little while. What are some key things that you're seeing through the work that you're doing and the research that you are exposed to? What are some key things that you see is stumping people from flourishing at the moment, and ways that they can keep themselves green and growing?
Yeah, sure. controversial is not the right word, but some of the things that I present in this space and that I've been having some conversations around, I know maybe sit a little bit uncomfortably with people. So bear with me, and as I talk you through them. So I totally and fully understand that people are under a very different mental or psychological experience than they have previously. I guess we tend not to use the word mental health, and the reason being is because just the term mental health has been connected to deficit. So as soon as we talk about mental health, everyone starts to think of things that are not right or going or not going well. Whereas mental health, if we had actually just left the term as it is, it's actually a healthy mind. But unfortunately, we've shifted the meaning that most people bring to mind when we use the term mental health. So we talk about psychological well-being, and the reason being is because there's lots of elements to our psychological well-being. It's how we're absorbing the information in the world. It's where are we getting it from? What are we interacting with? And then when we interact with it, how do we process it? What are our thinking strategies like? Do we have healthy thinking strategies? What does our support network look like? So who are the sorts of people we're having important conversations with? And are those conversations enhancing our well-being or potentially detracting from our well-being? So, and an example I'll give there, everyone knows when they get in a mood where they just want someone to go, there, it must suck to be you. They don't want to talk to someone who's going to challenge them. They'll deliberately seek out someone who's going to basically sit in the puddle with them and go, oh my God, this sucks. How awful is it? And, you know, that conversation on occasion, because we just feel like we just need to sit in our misery, which is perfectly healthy on occasion, is good for us, because we just get to go, blah, this sucks and it's not fair and, you know, why me? But if we can't move out of that and then have also some healthy conversations with people who kind of say, well, come on, Mel, you know, is it really that bad? Or if it is that bad, what are you going to do about it? And encourage us to actually take some positive steps, then yes, things can be, you know, we can get ourselves into some pretty unhealthy cycles and some pretty unhealthy spaces. So psychological well-being actually encompasses lots of different aspects. And I think one of the things that the COVID crisis has exposed is that many of us don't actually have a very good psychological toolkit. We actually haven't been helped to learn the skills that enable us to, in a healthy way, experience what's happening to us when we're challenged, and then be able to use healthy coping strategies, if you like, to endure, be resilient, but then also recover and grow. So that's where I'd start from.
Oh, look, I think that answers my next question in terms of like leaders of organizations or in the workplace. And a lot of your work is helping organizational leadership with their psychological well-being, and I love that. And now I even context when the theme of the show, I love the recalibration that you did on that. It's about human flourishing and psychological well-being. We are not talking, and there's this there's a lot of what's come out is suffering in silence, but potentially within organizations, when you are either observing someone's not doing too well or helping these conversations, particularly where I'm saying I'm answering my question, maybe reframing the word mental health to psychological well-being would be a good start. What can our leaders be doing better right now to tool themselves up to help their teams flourish?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question, and there's a few elements to it. I mean, emotional intelligence is the skill set, and amazingly, it's featured in the first 8 of the top 10 skills required to be successful in the future of work, released by the World Future of Work, whoever they are. You guys can Google it, you'll find it. And so they've released the top 10 skills required for people to be successful, and emotional intelligence skills, capabilities feature in the first 8 of that top 10 list. So I would encourage anyone to start doing some reading. If you have the opportunity to do some professional development, then put in a proposal to your boss about, investing in that side of your professional development. So that's an easy one. That's a critical. It's kind of, for me, it's a no-brainer, because it is the skill set that then helps you navigate those tricky situations. But the other things, which are, obviously, we can't develop our emotional capabilities overnight. So I can't just magically wake up tomorrow and go, ta-da, I'm now the most emotionally intelligent person on earth. It takes us some time to develop those. But a few things. One is, in order for us to flourish as human beings, right, we actually have to experience a range of emotions, not just positive emotions. That's box of fluffy ducks, unicorns and rainbows nonsense, which, people who know me know that rainbows and unicorns are fun to have around, but they're not a sustainable way of life. So it is actually very, very important for us to experience negative emotion and positive emotion. We just need the ratio to tip in favor of positive. So I think one of the things people are struggling with at the moment is that the amount of negative emotion has probably gone up significantly. Things like frustration, boredom, but those aren't mental health issues. If I'm just shitty because I'm sick of the same park that I have to go to because of the 5K radius, that's not a mental health issue. That's you throwing a tantrum because you can't have what you want. And we do have to be careful as individuals that we look at the difference and we go, actually, I'm just really frustrated because I can't go to the shop that I want. And so how do I sit with that? It's absolutely okay to me be frustrated, but what is that doing to me? What is it doing to the version of me that's turning up? Is it meaning that I'm not really pleasant to talk to? Does it mean that I'm starting to see everything through the same negative lens? Like, what is the impact that those emotions are having? And I think for a lot of people, the balance is out. The ratio is harder to achieve. And I don't think that's make-believe at all. I think that's very real. But without those tools to be able to go, well, at least I've got a park for a start, and I can access the park for 2 hours. And instead of going to the park cranky that it's the same park that I went to and then not actually enjoying the hour that I was out there, those are tools that we can build for ourselves. We can actually stop ourselves in our tracks and kind of give ourselves a little bit of a gentle flick over the back of the head and go, hey, guys, come on. Actually, I'm at a park. I've got fresh air. So those are the sorts of tools that we can actually be catching each other. So the first thing is, for leaders at work, when people are expressing their negative emotion, it's actually healthy. It's much better that they're talking about the fact that they're bored and frustrated, or that they maybe, they're uncertain about the future or not feeling particularly hopeful about what's happening. It's actually okay for them to be expressing that, but then allowing an opportunity to say, well, what then does that mean? Where do you feel like you could go next? What are the sorts of things that you think would support you through this period of time? Because we've maybe got another 2 or 3 weeks of it, or 2 or 3 months of it, or whatever, whatever the challenge might be. So I think that's an important thing, but please don't take what I'm saying as taking away from the reality of those people who are experiencing psychological distress as a result of the difficulties. And, you mentioned, Despy, in your opening about the funeral. Our family experienced one as well. And, I just can't, I would never have imagined having to organise a funeral and be the person responsible to choose who could come and who couldn't. Like, that just is, how do you decide who gets to grieve in what particular way? You can only have 10, and, so those sorts of things, those are game changers for people in terms of their psychological well-being, especially if they have particular cultural traditions around things like funerals or baptisms or those sorts of events that are also loaded with individual and cultural, very special celebrations that have very traditional rituals associated with them. And we've literally just, COVID doesn't have any respect for any of those. So those can be real game changers. But just the day-to-day, I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I can't walk where I want, I can't shop where I want. Those are things that we could learn to be better at without any question.
Oh, 1,000%. And I do. I think of love or loathe Facebook with my mother's brother at the time, and I just thought, for her not to have this closure, he was so close to her. In the end, using my resources, how can I help her through this? It was through a live stream like this. I could never
Yep.
have imagined thinking of this. So I set her up with an iPad in her car at the front of the service because of the restriction of how many she couldn't be, just to feel close to him. And to this day, she
Yeah.
said, at least I had that.
Absolutely.
So it is been, and I love what you've shared. And this is something now, I was just thinking as you're talking, I'm like, you always bring us back to center and to the core, to tap into gratitude and appreciation, can flick the mind very quickly.
Yep.
And something that you have taught many of us to you have that in the toolkit. What are you grateful for? We've got Lucky Cashmore on the live, a fellow MTILPer. And for anyone else that is joining us live, please feel free to throw in the questions for Mal. And like you said, during this interesting time, how would you suggest finding the balance between keeping busy and finding time to relax?
Yeah, fantastic. So this touches on another, probably a key thing for me, which I've experienced and had lots of conversations with. One of the things that you'd be very familiar with, the fact that mindfulness has become quite popular over the last few years, and the understanding of the practice of mindfulness and the benefits that it can bring. But besides that, if I just talk about some of the benefits of mindfulness, is the ability of us to be able to just be and be quiet and not actually have anything to do. Now, partly being in that space goes against us as human beings. Our brains are wired. We are what's called teleological, which is a fancy schmancy word for saying we're always on the way to. So we are goal oriented. It's built into our DNA. So we are designed to be working towards something. Okay, we don't just exist for no reason. So we're always looking for something to be moving towards. So the ability of us to be still is something we have to work quite hard at. But the reality is that it's an important capability, because that's the ability to be present and to be fully present, which is where we experience all of the magic in every moment. We can only experience it if we're fully present. So another thing that COVID has exposed is our lack of ability to just be with ourselves and our own thoughts. Now, the way we get around that as human beings is we fill every moment. If we're busy, we don't have to worry about what's the craziness going on in the head, because we're not paying any attention to it. We're rushing to the next thing. We're filling every space with something to do. And what COVID has done is it's forced that noise to be removed in a lot of cases. So a lot of activities that people would be filling their space with, they've been forced to stop doing. Certainly for those people in Melbourne, they have even been restricted in terms of how long they can do activities for and how far they can even go to do some of those activities. So when all the noise goes away, you are just left with you and your mind. That's it. And for most of us, when we actually see what's going on in there, it's a little scary. And we're not actually ready to face it. And the reason why we haven't faced it is because we've had this great coping strategy, which is just go busy. Then we don't have to face it. Now, one of my treasured teachers, a guy called B, as in the letter B, I'm not quite sure why he puts the letter B there, but Alan Wallace, he talks about his mind, and he's a master practitioner at mindfulness. And he says, my mind is a scary place. I try not to go there alone. Is how he described that. Yeah, which I just think is beautiful. So for many of us, we've actually been thrust without those mindfulness skills. Now, I have some mindfulness skills. I'm certainly not a master practitioner as mindfulness is concerned. I'm certainly not, anywhere near amongst the company of the professionals in this space. But I have a very solid practice, which I've had for a long time. So I've loved the opportunity to stop and to pause and to and just be with my environment, myself, the ability to think about, what does this mean? What is all this change? What is all this chaos? How is the world working? What do I hope for the future? I've actually really enjoyed the ability to be in that space. But for many people, they will have been all of a sudden thrust into that moment where it's just them and what's going on in their head. And if we're not ready and we're not equipped to be able to do that well, that can be pretty scary and pretty unnerving. So I would encourage anyone to revisit, if you've revisited it in the past and it didn't work for you, or if you've really kind of never thought about taking that step, about a mindfulness practice, because that's the capacity you're building in the mind, the ability to just be fully present and be still. And that's something we need when we're thrust into these particular environments for COVID. So that's the relax and the stop bit that I would share for Lucky. But the balance is the landscape for flourishing is knowing that you do need some level of movement, you need some level of interaction, but there are times when you need more or less. So if we can tap into, is today a day I've really, my focus today is just to reach out. So who can I ring? Who can I jump on a FaceTime with? Who can I, who can I reach out to? What is my landscape saying that needs to be nurtured right at the moment? And if it's saying you need to be quiet, try and find some things that you can do in that space. If it's saying you need to connect, then think about who it is that you can connect with that's going to give you that quality nurturing. The term balance for me is an interesting one because it's just so subjective. What Lucky might consider balanced, I might consider crazy. Despy might look at it and go, oh, really? You think that's balance? So I think it's about that ability to listen. What's your landscape telling you that needs nurturing right now? Which bit of your psychological well-being needs to be nurtured, and take the cues from there.
You have an incredible, and even hearing you, I haven't been able to master mindfulness, and it's something I get that practice through running. Like I pound the pavement, and that's the time that I have. But I do recall through the program in 2012 doing a mindfulness. You extended an invitation, and it was a pivot. Like that's the only time I can remember. So you are quite masterful. I think it's something because you've had it as a ritual. It was an incredible experience, and even just hearing it's like, yes, I've got to get back to seeing how I can do that for myself. And is that still very much a ritual, a part of your day, Mel?
Oh, it's Despy, it's the not negotiable part of my day. There's nothing that bumps it. I practice and I am, and I have actually taken my lay vows in Tibetan Buddhism. So just to put that into context. So my mindfulness practice is, I guess, very much influenced by very traditional mindfulness, very authentic mindfulness practice. But I have a practice the first 24 minutes of the day and the last 24 minutes of the day, which are completely not negotiable. And it's a particular type of practice to set myself up for the day and then to review the day and release, allowing myself to finish that day however it has finished, but allow it to come to an end so that I can be fresh and ready for the next experience that's given. So on top of that, I then try to incorporate wherever possible informal and formal opportunities to do mindfulness practice. And some of the informal ones are things like, sitting at traffic lights, or if I'm standing in a queue, or I just find myself, maybe a call finishes 5 minutes early and I've got just a few extra minutes up my sleeve before a next meeting or a next call, and I'll just sit and do some very informal, maybe a couple of breathing activities, or just settling myself and getting recentered, right through to, there are 4 weekends of the year that I lock myself away for Saturday and Sunday and take, all my goods up the hill where I live. I've built a temple, so I can head up there, and I stay up there for 4 weekends each year and do 2 days full practice at a time. And every year I do a retreat. So those are at the more formal end, but just every day, walking mindfulness is fantastic if you, if you are in sort of physical movement from time to time. Even just going to the loo, you can do a mindfulness practice on the way and on the way back to wherever your office is set up in the house. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around mindfulness. We've got some great practices that I've recorded of some guided practices that are totally free in the Happiness Lab that people can use as often and as much as they like. So I just start somewhere because it's really, really important.
The Happiness Lab is where we've got to go, and we'll give you more information at the end. And our dear friend Michelle has directed me to that, particularly through first lockdown. My head was just spinning, the 3 primary school kids, and I couldn't. And she said, "You've got to go to the Happiness Lab." And I think I really do. It was just a spin cycle of a washing machine, and it is something that I would that's a key takeaway already. And we're halfway through. Oh, look at this, Mel. Our dear Nola Cuddy. Hello, we love you, Nola.
Hey,
Some
Nola.
great advice as always. And we've got another love a bit of walking mindfulness. That is Fiona's My Savior Oxymoron. Yes.
Hey, Fee. Wow. Good luck at
Hey,
council
Fee.
elections. Yeah.
Yes, she's actually going to join us soon on the podcast as well.
Is
Thank you
she?
so much for
She's
joining
she's a
us.
crazy girl. I did a stint as a councillor on a local council, so crazy that she's trying for a second time.
Oh, look, this is maybe you could join us. That's a whole other world that I need to brush up on. I don't
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
It's
a whole different world.
A whole different world, and a lot of walking and mindfulness there to get you prepped by the sounds of things, Fee. But that is a very, very important thing for people. And like you said, there's a resource there, and Mel is very good at it. It's not the core part of your business, but certainly it's something that you can see. Having experienced it myself, it was something that I've never been able to kind of get to that place again. So I'll be looking at that.
The mindfulness stuff is it's pretty much incorporated in every course we do. And I do actually coach people just on mindfulness practice, one-on-one coaching for people who are really wanting to get past so often some of the difficulties in that first part of establishing a simple practice. And so the coaching that I do is just to help people get past that initial bump and to get themselves set up so that they can then manage their practice themselves moving forward. So yeah, I do spend a bit of time in that space.
Oh, amazing. Well, I think it's really pertinent because as someone, I always think it's an overactive mind. Like even my family will say like, wait, just let her finish her thought because they're talking to me, but I'm finishing something off. They're like, wait, she'll come back to us soon. And then I'll be like, okay, now what was it again that you said? So I think I've really got to work on that. Now, another thing that I've really admired and continue to admire is how you, from very beginning, when social media wasn't so much of well, it's always been a thing in the last decade, but not as intrusive on our lives as it is now. There's a new documentary that's come on Netflix, which is I don't know if you've seen or heard of The Social Dilemma. And I was really keen when I was thinking about our chat today. I was like, and I thought, what would Mel do in this case? I wonder what Mel would think about this. And I think just in terms of our industry being in tourism, it's all about human connection, shared connection, and, couple taking that away, that this can, what binds us in this connectivity as humans. Also, then the elements of like over screen time and social media comparativitis. I heard a speaker say about that, social media comparativitis. What is the science saying, Mel, around the screen time that we're having and social media to an extent on our brains and our psychological well-being? See, I caught myself, not mental health, our psychological well-being.
Okay, so the science unfortunately doesn't back as strongly as those who strongly advocate in this space to say that social media is completely awful and screens are evil and we should be getting rid of them and cutting them down. The science doesn't actually back that at all. Sorry, guys, I've just made everyone feel seasick by bumping my laptop. So for those looking, yes, you can find some studies that show some issues, but what they're actually highlighting is the way that the technology is being used as opposed to the technology itself. And I think that's a really, really important distinction for us to make because there are huge benefits in the technology that in fact significantly contribute to people's psychological well-being. So we can't just grab the whole thing and throw it out because we think it's evil. What we probably don't like is the fact that the responsibility comes back on us as being caretakers of how is the technology being used. And certainly from a parenting perspective, that means that, yes, parents have got to take, caregivers, people in those roles have got to take some level of responsibility for how the technology is being introduced into their lives, how they're using that technology, how it's being monitored, because there are, in fact, some very healthy ways of using the technology. And in fact, you and I are using it in a really healthy way right now as a perfect example. So are there problems with the technology? Yeah, there is. There's no question, but it's not the actual technology itself. It's the way that we use it. If I look at someone's Facebook page and they look happy, I'm not built as a human being to compare myself to that person and go, oh my God, they look happier than me. That's actually not how I'm built or programmed. So my point here is, if I am looking at someone's photo and I am having those thoughts, I'm having those thoughts because of the way that I've developed my view of the world over a period of time. And so that is up to the people who influence me most as I'm a growing human being to help me build a healthier version of me, so that I don't fall into that trap of comparison. Now, here's the trick, right? If we're talking about the generation of children that we're raising now, we're talking about the people raising those children are in fact probably mostly using social media in the same unhealthy ways that they hope that their kids don't. So it's very difficult for me to potentially tell small human not to compare when all they see me doing is going, oh, such and such posted their new this. Oh, such and such posted. So if I'm doing it as the grown up, if that's the way I'm using the technology, then of course that's going to filter down. So we have to pause and be a little bit cautious about how we judge it.
Absolutely. I love that. So it's not the technology, it's how it is being used. I am fearful as a parent and with a preteen in the house, and I'm seeing it firsthand. There's been a little bit of latitude, a little tiny bit, because the friend, it's how they're connecting. But I'm also, as by way of observing behavior, that it does impact, because they haven't built that muscle yet to understand that it's how they're seeing themselves. So just working different strategies with that. So I'm just now, it's kind of like 13 is so I'm going with that 13 is the minimum age. But we have to build our own, lead by example there. That's for sure. I think that is so true. But I think.
Yep. And I think also we need to be patient in the conversations we have. So rather than always be criticizing someone about the way they're using the technology, actually engage in a conversation with them about how they're engaging. So why is that compelling to them? Why do they enjoy that site versus that site? What is it that attracts them to that particular, whether it's a particular Instagram pages they follow, or whether it's a particular podcast they listen to. So rather than just always be critical, they're doing it too much or too much time, or they're not doing enough of something else, actually engage with them, because at the heart of what's happening is it's fulfilling a need, right? So if they have a particular podcast that they listen to, it's fulfilling a need. That's why they listen to it. If it didn't fulfill a need, they wouldn't. Remember, we're teleological as human beings. We don't do just shit for any reason. Right? We do stuff because it contributes to whatever it is that we're going towards. Now, if what we're going towards isn't particularly healthy, then it's easy for us to judge along the way and go, oh, you shouldn't do that. But the reality is, engage, have a conversation. What is attractive about that particular site? Why do they follow that person? Why does that particular person's posts make them feel X, Y, or Z? Because if you can just hold the judgment back and engage and show some interest, you might just learn what the need is and then find other things that you can introduce them to that also fulfill that need. And then you start to have just a little bit more space between the different things. So I would encourage, try and hold your judgment back about whether it's wrong or right, or it's annoying you, and actually really engage and try and get to know, why do they love that game so much? Why do they feel like they can't put the controller down? And I think that's a piece that we probably miss because we're frustrated that they want their screens again, or, we really want them to be doing something else. Well, why? Half the time we can't, because we can't even answer the question why. So I think that engagement piece is really, really important.
I hear when we're having a conversation about that, particularly when it comes around with children. I'm just so grateful that there's a level of trust to be openly, and sometimes it takes time that we're having this conversation. But then when you hear it's more that self, yeah, it can be some self criticism on themselves, and as a parent, or to anyone, it's not even as a parent, to anyone that you love, to look to be talking about themselves like that, and it's influenced by just something that they've consumed. It's so beyond out of your control to be
Yeah.
able to, I don't know, you are beautiful, or you are it, like, yeah, that's something that have to keep traversing very carefully around
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
And
challenge, and it's a challenge everybody's facing. There's no question.
it's but it, like you said, it's an important, like, say, how holding the space to have the conversation is right on. We've also got Michelle, who put me onto the Happiness Lab, who's come on board and said the mindfulness practice on Mel's Happiness Lab is her favorite. I can really struggle with sleep when I'm busy, and this practice is gold. So that would be a good one to start with if you do have that overactive mind. Thank you so much, Michelle.
That's
Now,
lovely.
you have gifts. You definitely, you have a lot of gifts, Miss Mel Neal, in case you don't. No one's told you that lately, but let me just tell you, you've got a lot of gifts. Now, one very, I mean, I'm just in awe when I first got in a room with you at just your ability to take scientific research and theory uh, and deliver it in such a practical, actionable, teachable way. Is this something that's always been a gift for you, or is it something that you've had to keep, you know, I guess, in keeping you and your team flourishing? How do you keep building that muscle to be able to take, to ingest information and put it out there in this way for that could help anybody out there that's listening to be able to take this type of work and be able to apply it to yourself?
Sure. I think one of the reasons why I have success in helping other people understand it is because it's been such a critical part of my own journey to being a healthy human being. So, like many others, I've had a few, hiccups and hurdles along the way. I haven't, as I tell people, I haven't always been this calm and enlightened, and I haven't always been this pleasant a human being either. And it's taken years and years of development. So part of it is that, I'm very much committed to the fact that there is no way I'm going to recommend that somebody try something if I haven't actually put it to the test myself. And so a lot of the stuff that just about everything that I teach, I sort of have as a practice in some way, shape, or another. Because the key is that I'll take gratitude, for example, right? Because it's a really great example. Most people in the space, gratitude, 3 great things, write down your gratitude journal, and it's just applied. People are just told to do that activity, and miraculously unicorns and rainbows will start appearing. But the reality is that the science tells us that, yes, gratitude is a part of flourishing, but the bit that we skip is the fact that each individual person needs to be able to use gratitude in a way that works for them. And so it's that piece that I suppose is the space that I feel most passionate about, because we can tell everyone to do gratitude, and I guarantee you that for a group of people, we just go tell them to do it, it'll work for them. There'll be, for some people, who'll go, yeah, that didn't really do much at all, and they'll stop. But there'll be some other people who are actually really damaged by being told to write down 3 things they're grateful for when they can't even find one in their whole life. Imagine someone who's just in the shittiest space of all time, and I mean really, like, nothing to compare it with, and we give them a pen and paper and a journal with flowers on the front and say, every day we want you to write down 3 things you're grateful for, and all we're doing is reminding that person every day what a terrible, terrible life they have. That's not going to sustain them for very long. So for me, it's about taking the science, and rather than it is about breaking it down and saying, yes, we know absolutely gratitude works, but it works because we need to help each person take gratitude and incorporate it in a way that nurtures them. And that's the bit that I think we miss. And we miss it for a few reasons. there's a very small amount of sort of laziness, can't be bothered, just give me the the headline. But the reality is that at the academic level, getting through the kind of noise to get down to those practical nuts and bolts is actually really tricky. Academic papers are written for other academic people. It's like a whole language of its own, right? So unless you're in the academic space, you look at a paper, you get three paragraphs in, and you just go, oh man, I don't even know what this means. And I'm determined, because I know the benefit is there, I'm determined to get past that and get into that level of detail which says, right, let's just get rid of all the fancy schmancy nonsense that's built there just to keep everybody in academia happy that academia is still alive and well. But what's the reality here? Because we need to take it out of the lab and let people have the benefits of it in real life. So it is a passion of mine. I'm no longer frustrated by it, because I do believe the academic world and the practical world, they both require each other, but you just can't play in each other's space. If I went to play in academia land, I'd be a disaster. And there's lots of academic people who are practically not so great, right? So we actually need each other. It's a really, really, it's an important relationship. So it doesn't frustrate me anymore, as long as, we have that ability to unpack the science, take out the practical elements, and then teach people in really simple ways that they can integrate those types of practices into their life.
So good. And Jade Lee agrees. Always great to hear from Mel. Guys, Glenn, wonderful Glenn, who sits behind the scenes here. I did tell him, Glenn, I don't think you realize she's kind of a big deal when and we've had the most it's so lovely to see so much engagement. I think people are really missing you, and the MTILT program that has been put on pause. It will come back again.
Of course.
Yeah, this is wonderful. This is wonderful to just to share you, Mel. So speaking of challenges, it would be really I would love to kind of get a sense of, if you can think back to a time, personally or professionally, or even in your own business, in Mind Insurance, that you would consider a worst moment, and expand on the lessons learned and how you overcame that. How does Mel overcome a significant challenge?
Yeah, well, in later years in my life, a lot healthier than I would have in the earlier years. So my earlier health issues certainly wore me down, and anyone out there who suffers chronic pain will understand, very much what it is that chronic pain does. And so that was something that took me a little while to master, and it was in fact mindfulness that enabled me to master it. And in my kind of early to mid 20s, but it was really the ability to start building healthy psychological practices into every day that allowed me to start sort of going in a different direction. So I feel that, there was sort of a couple of really massive step change moments, certainly in my early 20s, which enabled me to then look at what that sort of future of getting well actually looked like. And that realization that, in fact, whilst I needed lots of different assistance, it really came down to me. If I didn't get in the driver's seat, then things wouldn't go the way they went. So I think that's a really important moment for me. I think as a business owner and operator, I've certainly had moments where it's been, you sort of wonder, not am I doing it right or wrong, because I've managed to sort of get away from that for a very long time and leave those kind of out of my vocabulary, but more about, will something work? If there's a quiet moment, getting over that panic of going, oh my God, do I, will there be more work? When of course there's more work than you can poke a stick at if you just relax and get out of the way. Moving from that space of having to take everything because you panic that you got to take stuff, and then you end up taking stuff that isn't actually your real core business, but you just feel like you got to take everything that everyone asks you because you need to pay the bills and get those invoices in. So I certainly moved through that space as well. So I understand that significantly. And I think the key message I would give to people when they find themselves on that cusp where they're grabbing everything because they're desperate to establish themselves and keep that income rolling to survive, you must stop and you must ask yourself, what is my authentic offering? Because the more of the stuff that's not a good fit you take out of desperation, you stop allowing room and space for the authentic stuff to grow. And so you end up, in fact, creating a business model of your own making that stops you from succeeding how you'd like to. But it's a very nervous space to sit when you get to that cusp. You're in a space where you think to yourself, how could I even contemplate knocking back a piece of work? But in actual fact, the right thing for you to do is knock it back. Knock it back because, do you know what? It's not what you do. It's not what you're passionate about. It's not what you care about. And the more space we fill with the stuff that isn't authentically what we're meant to be doing, less space for when the authentic stuff turns up, or people are looking at you going, oh, Mel's probably way too busy for that, and they don't even bother calling. So you're missing out on opportunities you didn't even know were actually there. So that's a real pivotal moment I think when you go out on your own, is that cusp of actually saying, no, I'm going to take the risk and imagine that there might not be some income. And as I say to people, when they reach that point, be very careful what you wish for, because you probably find yourself busier than you've got the capacity to be able to manage. So, I've certainly had that moment. But I have to tell you, one of my most challenging times has probably been earlier this year when I had, after years and years of very good, steady health, I had quite a significant setback, which was a bit scary for myself and those around me. It really did knock me for six, and probably for the first time in 20 years since I've probably been knocked sideways, and it has taken me a bit of time to recover. And, I'm only really just feeling in the last few months that I'm starting to get my mojo back and feel like, I didn't lose myself, but I certainly wasn't particularly visible. I had to try pretty hard to find, the essence of Mel, but I think she's just about back. And I think my lesson there for people, certainly that I got was the patience piece, was just to be patient. And I'll continue to do that because I'm certainly not there yet.
Oh, so, and aren't we happy? I see you, Mel, and having your mojo back, and so much of what you've shared. It is coming. Just like, I think health for anyone working on their own, and I speak for a long time, I was flying completely solo with no backup as a team member, and that would really worry me, that I would have to be on my deathbed to not turn up to a training or not show up for a client. So actually looking even in your business for your health, or having those backup plans or those contingency plans, that when you are a service provider particularly, this is something that for all of us in our health, I mean, particularly this year with, the health has become very prevalent for all of us to keep ourselves healthy. But in terms of how our business continues to run, when something may happen to you is something that, that's a lesson for all of us to take on through this experience. Dear Mel, so in the beginning, when you launched your business and you thought, am I boss enough to take this on? Was there anything that was holding you back, or you knew with conviction, this is my next step, enough?
I certainly had the conviction to know that I probably wasn't going to flourish if I took a job working for somebody else. I was sure that I would be able to do successfully whatever was asked, but I certainly wouldn't flourish. What has been really special to me is that I've been in a position for the very first time for the last 2 years to be able to start to build a team around me, which is fabulous. And so I have, the amazing DJ, which so many of your listeners will know, my ginger ninja, because I do, I do poke fun at him being a ginger, but always lovingly. And actually, my young nephew, Aaron, works for us as well. He's in the team. And my older brother has actually just started a day a week with us as well, which is pretty damn special. And then I have a team of service providers, very amazing coaches that are all around Australia and New Zealand that work, sort of behind the scenes with a lot of the coaching and debriefing of some of the psychometric tools that we deliver. So that's been very special for me, because I've always kind of said to myself that, I've got this amazing community of MTELBers out there that have all done the training. And as the business grows, I would love nothing more than to only ever recruit from that pool. That would just be my absolute ultimate goal. I'm not sure that everyone out there's ultimate goal is to work for me, but I haven't taken that into consideration. That's just a minor detail off the side. So to be in this position, and I made a firm commitment to myself first, and then to the boys, that I would absolutely keep them on throughout this crisis, come hell or high water. That would be my number one goal, would be to make sure that they stayed. And they are, they are not just great at what they do, they're great humans. They live by the principle of humans being better humans, which is, that's our tagline. They understand fundamentally why we do what we do. They also do their strengths profile. We talk about our strengths and how we're bringing our strengths to both our wins and our challenges. So I really am blessed to be able to, build a team based on all of the things that I help others and leaders be. And, that's my challenge, is to be the best leader for the team that I can, just like everyone that I work with who tells me that that's their, that's their goal as well. So the last couple of years have been really, really special. And I look forward to that continuing and building and being able to go out there and provide opportunities, hopefully, for people to join the team as time goes by.
So good. What a gift. What a gift to be able to build something and bring good people around you that have those same shared values like DJ. And he did, you can see here, he did find that Ginger. He found a lot of humor in that. And Lucky is saying she's ready to come and work for you any day. But what's something that you've learnt about yourself this year? What's something that you discovered through these experiences?
God, Lucky, you're bloody pushing me, testing me today, aren't you? What have I learned about myself? Probably, what have I learned about myself this year? So, one thing I've learned is that all of the hard work that I've put in has paid off, because, and if ever I questioned that, do I do stuff? I mean, I say to people, remember, I'm at the kind of freaky end of all the stuff that I'm teaching you. I'm kind of doing it at the freaky end, which is not what I'm advising others. And I understand that that's how I do it. I'm exceptionally disciplined in the way that I implement what I do. And one thing I learned was that there's a reason for that, and it's paid off, because the challenge that I have faced this year has been significant and quite overwhelming. And if I hadn't done all of those hard yards, if I didn't have those practices well embedded, I think I would be in a significantly different space than I would have. And, something else I did learn, Lucky, that I will share because I think it's important. I've received this year, kind of unsolicited and out of the blue, a couple of gratitude letters that people have actually sent to me. And for many of you, you'll know the gratitude letter exercise in terms of, thinking of someone who's done something for you in a special way, and actually doing a dedicated communication to share that with them. And I've actually received a couple of those this year. So I understand, and Despy, you said to me, I definitely have some gifts. So I understand that I have some gifts, and I have a commitment. My life's purpose is to make sure I use those gifts every day. But I guess this year I have really learned and started to finally understand, not from a the perspective of feeling good about what I do, but fundamentally understanding the difference that I am making because of some of those things that have been communicated back to me, and that my goal is that people make sustainable change that's life-changing and lasts lifelong. And I'm actually managing to do that. I'm getting some feedback from people who are saying, they had interactions with me 10, 12, 15 years ago, and it's still making a difference today. So what I've learned from that is, one, that obviously those gifts they're paying off. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But secondly, it's almost upped the responsibility. So that means that if I can have an interaction with someone 12 years ago, and this year they write me a letter and tell me how much of a difference it's made, how important it is that every interaction I have is a flourishing interaction, because that's the impact. And we all have that impact as human beings, but because of that, I guess, very privileged space that I find myself in, where people allow me in just a little bit closer than they do others, I've really learned that I need to keep that top of mind, and absolutely honour it every moment that I can.
So beautiful. I have to leave just some space to let that sink in. My dear Mel, this is why we just adore you, and what a beautiful thing to really learn and appreciate about yourself. So quickly, as we start wrapping things off, and I know there's be like, no, keep going, Despina. We can't. We have to start. Just quickly, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
Oh, look, the best advice I've ever received. I've got a couple of really cool mentors, and I think one of them, which I've shared with a lot of people, is the grass might be greener, but don't forget you've still got to mow it. And so that's always been a fantastic piece of advice for me, because we can get distracted with shiny things, and we can get distracted especially with shiny things when we've got a level of dissatisfaction sitting with us somehow. Something can always look better when we're a bit shitty with what we've got. For lots of people who've chased the greener thing only to find out that, it actually still needs just as much hard work as the previous thing that you chased, I think is an important one. So that whole perspective taking, which is what that particular piece of advice has really helped me, is develop some very healthy perspective taking techniques. So that would be one very cool piece of advice. The second, probably most important, would be, how do I sum this up? Is that being a values-driven, a value-centered person has inherently some incredible challenges, because it means that you will turn up not always as people's cup of tea. And unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to go. So you have to be a bit robust in those moments, because compromising yourself to make yourself someone's cup of tea is far more detrimental. And so the benefits of being values-driven far outweigh the deficits, but just remembering that as a result of you being so true to your values, it means that you will turn up from time to time, not everyone's cup of tea.
Drop the mic on that one. Just through some, I think all the values work that we did, particularly I was in the 2012 cohort. There was a recent experience that, it was just something that was kind of like uncompromising, and it's something that I won't. Yeah, you would have been proud anyway. That was something that when it's
Super.
something that. Whereas I would have been a lot more accommodating probably in the past when faced with such a challenge. An internet resource that really helps you in your business and your team, is there something?
So, yeah, absolutely. So we've always been remote, so we don't have an office, and that's because no one would be sitting in it, so it would just be an empty piece of real estate. So we've always worked remotely. So DJ works from his place, and Aaron works from his place, and my brother works from his place. I have a beautiful office at home where I am in West Gippsland. So we have always worked remotely, so the whole COVID thing hasn't really been much of an issue for us whatsoever. We use a tool called Podio, which is really it's a Citrix product. It's not the one I've always used. I've been very wedded to others, but they've just not been able to grow with the functionality as the team's grown. It's where basically our whole existence in terms of what we do exists there. We all understand exactly what's going on all the time. It supports us all to be able to be at our best, reduce the amount of emails we have, make sure our communication is really high, and make us feel like we're actually in an office. We're in there, then we're in there together working just as if we were a team. So that's what actually keeps us together in a tight sense of what we're working on, what our purpose is, why we're doing what we're doing. But it also helps a lot of those sort of very practical things around time management and prioritization of tasks and those sorts of things. So from a very practical perspective, that's probably our number one business tool that we use, because it incorporates so many things that help all of us. So that would be one that I would promote. But as many of you will know, I've always been a great passionate user of Evernote. It's just that its functionality just got a little bit below where I needed it to go, but I still think Evernote is a really great product. And of course I go by the getting things done principles. So anything that's got that incorporated in it is really important as well.
I love that. Podio. I'd never heard of that one before. I might check it
No,
out.
we've got Aaron to thank for that. He found that for us, and we were just absolutely stoked with. And it's totally customizable, and you can automate all your workflows. It's absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant.
I don't have shares in it, by the way.
A book that you would recommend to tourism hubbers and MTilpers that's got you inspired that you'd like to share.
Okay, so we are revisiting right now in our Happiness Lab group. Everyone who's got a Happiness Lab can get into our closed Facebook group for Happiness Lab users. Now, we're revisiting one of our favourites, and she's a real hero of mine in this particular space, Barbara Fredrickson's Positivity. So part of that is the project, the Positivity Portfolio project that we're running currently in the Happiness Lab. And basically each week there's an emotion that everyone has to hunt and gather for experiences of. And we're just getting some very, very special, posts that people are collecting and sharing of themselves that are linked to each of the emotions. And the Positivity book is really her research around that ratio that I mentioned earlier, of positive to negative emotional experience. And it's also the research behind the Positivity Portfolio project, which we're actually doing live. Not too late to join, even if you were excited by the thought of that. Jump in, doesn't matter that you weren't there at the start, you'll catch up. Totally free to participate. And everyone so far seems to be having a pretty cool time doing it. And some of the participants are even including, like, their kids are even participating in the project, the portfolio project as well, collecting experiences of each of the emotions. So Barbara Fredrickson is, probably one of the greatest emotions researchers of modern times. And so, yeah, it's a very accessible book. So it's one of those ones where the person in the lab was actually able to stand outside the lab and talk like a human being. So we think she's pretty cool.
Awesome. Love it. And this sounds so exciting. Happiness Lab. We'll give you some more details on how to have access. As we wrap up, your favorite destination and holiday and what you're most looking forward to heading out to with Kaz post-COVID?
Wow. Well, for those that do know, I take a sabbatical in the middle of each year. So 6 weeks of either all of June and half of July, or half of June and all of July. So we've missed out on doing that, of course, but we usually disappear somewhere in the Kimberley, Pilbara. So I have a very, very strong connection to country, and some very, heartfelt views around the way that our Indigenous populations have been sort of treated over time since we all arrived. And so going there and trying to tap into that traditional Indigenous experience of country is something that's very, very important. So we just love to go and disappear, and no technology other than a camera. We turn everything off, we disappear, we recharge, we just experience, life one breath in, one breath out at a time. And it's a very special 6 weeks. So as soon as we're able to do that, that's, I think, what our first journey will be.
Oh, how wonderful. Love it. And okay, so how can we best connect with you, and any parting piece of advice or thoughts or insights that you would like to leave everyone with?
Cool. Well, mindinsurance.com.au is the website. And obviously if you go there, you'll find everything. There's, if you want me in person, great, there's a bit for that. But we've also got some really fancy, like the Happiness Lab is a fantastic tool where you can jump inside and you have your own laboratory to do some really cool activities that increase your well-being, all empirical activities. And then, of course, there's the Applied Emotional Intelligence course, which is a really comprehensive learning path around emotional intelligence. So there's those sorts of things, and we have a special discount for anyone who's listened to our either the live or the podcast. So there's some details there with a discount code that you can chuck in if you're interested. But just reach out. If you know Deej, then just obviously dj@mindinsurance.com.au. Just get in touch with him. He will certainly get to you a lot quicker than I will. So that's the important thing, is that he's able to do that much quicker. but of course, just reach out if there's, you want to just get to know what we do, or have a conversation about what you think might be right for you, or if there's anything there that we can obviously do that can add some value. So Mind Insurance, the actual name of it came from kind of a cheeky concept of insurance packages for your mind. Like you have extras on your health insurance. Yeah. So, I'm hoping that what I'm offering is a whole bunch of extras for your mind, that you can invest in your psychological well-being and building a really healthy mind.
Well, I think just and there's DJ's contact, right there, DJ at mindinsurance.com.au. I think all the extras that we got, if this is just a taste of it, we, assist making change and your psychological well-being. It's one thing to do it, to do something once, but it's really important to have sustainable, lifelong change where the insurance comes in, not just being reactive, but being proactive with your psychological well-being. I've filled my book here, my notebook with notes. This is something, it's not about the technology, it's about how it's been used. Building a healthier version of you means sometimes relaxing and getting out of your own way. And I love it. What is your authentic gift? And looking at what is your authentic offering and staying true to that through your values and through what you do. The landscape of flourishing, I cannot think of anyone better to take you on that journey than your good self, Mel Neal. Thank you so much. I'll be forever grateful, and I'm so glad we're recording it in multiple different ways so that this just is a digital footprint in the world of good, and extending your whole philosophy of humans being better humans and helping support them do that.
I'm so grateful, Despy. Thank you.
Right back at you, my dear Mel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the comments. It is. There you go. Lucky. Thank you. Me too. I wish this could go on all day. Could listen to you both all day long. Lucky, I do. I have to kind of start wrapping this up. Maybe we'll need another version or just a Mel hit every now and then if Mel would be happy to come back on board. Thank you to Mel. Thank you to everybody for sharing and engaging throughout this episode. If you are watching the replay, please continue to share your comments. And if you are tuning in to the podcast, please check out instituteofexcellence.com/podcast, and we will have all of the resources of what Mel has shared with us so freely, and also access to the Happiness Lab by visiting mindinsurance.com.au. I'm feeling like I've got some of my own work to do in my mindfulness and getting back to my own core after this experience. I hope this has ignited something in our conversations for you to look after yourself. Look after yourself, because you matter. You do have a gift, and you do have a way that you can authentically share that to be a better human and help others be better humans too. So I hope that's something we can leave you with today. If you've loved this experience, please head over to Apple or Spotify or Google Podcasts. Leave a little review or subscription. That will help keep supporting us, keep giving you really incredible humans like Mel onto the show. So until next time, my dear friends, be excellent today and every single day. Big love to everyone, and happy World Mental Health Awareness, or in Mel's readaptation, World Psychological Wellbeing Day. Big love to you. Thanks, guys. Thanks again for joining us on the Tourism Hub podcast. If you found this podcast valuable, it will mean the world to give us a review on Apple iTunes. Be excellent, and don't forget we also have courses available at instituteofexcellence.com to help you and your small business greatness. Relax.